Have you been thinking a lot about lease accounting lately? I know I have. I'm a technical accounting consultant with LeaseQuery, and I work with organizations all day trying to figure out how to make compliance with these new standards easier. And that relates to ASC 842, IFRS 16, GASB 87, and 96. Now, some organizations I speak with decide to move forward using Excel, and that makes me a little curious. How difficult would it be to get compliant with the new standard using Excel alone? And I mean from scratch, start to finish, no templates or anything like that. So I went through a little project to build out the compliance Excel to build the amortization schedules, disclosures, and journal entries. So if you're curious to understand what I learned through this project, watch the rest of this video. All right, so the first thing I did was I took this basic lease information and I entered it into amortization schedules that I had built. So I built out a formatted amortization schedule with what you would expect: year, cash, liability, lease expense, liability reduction, liability balance, short-term and long-term portion, your asset lease expense, your right-of-use asset balance, and asset lease expense. So I built out the formatted amortization schedule and entered all of this information into the schedule. Now, along the way, creating formulas, sometimes I would get errors. I would have to go back and fix it, but I eventually figured it out, although it was a tedious and frustrating process. But I did this 18 times for 18 leases. Now, once I finished the amortization schedules, I then built pivot tables to help me summarize the information so I could tie it back to my disclosures later on. So I went through and built pivot tables in each of the 18 tabs. Now, once the pivot tables were complete, I could move on to the disclosures. Now, for the disclosures, I started with the complete disclosures report, which is essentially your lease cost separated by operating, finance, short-term, variable, and sublease income. Next, I moved on to the cash flow disclosures, my new right-of-use assets for the year, and the weighted average discount rate and lease term, and those all are separated by operating and finance leases. Now, I tied the report, the complete disclosure report, back to each tab within the amortization schedules or the pivot tables. Now, once I built the disclosures and everything tied out, I then moved on to the maturity analysis, which is another quantitative disclosure. That gives you your undiscounted cash flows for the next 5 years and beyond. So I went back, tied all of the cells back to the amortization schedules, and was able to build out this report. Now, building the disclosures took some time. Building the formulas, one thing I noticed is you have to connect the report back to the amortization schedules, and you do that through 18 tabs. Along the way, you may forget a plus sign or something along the line, those lines, and then the formula errors out. And I did that multiple times, as you can see on the video. Now, eventually I completed the process, but it was very frustrating. Now, after I finished the disclosures, I then created the journal entries. And for this, I went through each tab. I created the format for the journal entry. I connected the formatted journal entry back to the amortization schedule cells and was able to build my first journal entry for my transition month, which was January 2022. Now, keep in mind, if you're doing this on a monthly basis to post monthly transactions to your ERP, you're going to have to go in and do this for all of your tabs within the Excel document. Very time consuming. Now, you could do this on an annual basis for adjustments, which a lot of organizations are doing. Now, once I finished my Excel document, I decided to put the same information into LeaseQuery to compare the times that it took me. Now, I entered all 18 leases, I got the journal entries and disclosures. And this is what I learned. Using Excel, it took me about 45 minutes per lease on average, which is 13 hours for 18 leases or so, approximately. Now, for LeaseQuery, it took me about 5.5 minutes per lease, which was a total of about 1.5-ish hours to finish the entire project. Now, that's a big difference. It took me about 12% of the time using LeaseQuery versus Excel. Now, the three things that I learned that really, stuck out to me during this project is, number one, saved a lot of time. I'm thinking as an accountant, if I'm able to, finish this compliance project for lease accounting faster, I can think about other things that add value to the organization. So that's number one. Number two is that I could trust the numbers using software. When I was using the Excel document, I'm building the formulas. Sometimes I miss cells, things happen. And the whole time I'm like, I'm really not sure if this is correct. Now, I tied out the numbers and it seemed right, but I was never quite sure or confident in the numbers. Using software, I definitely was. Number three is the fact that you can improve employee satisfaction. Throughout this entire project, I learned that this was very frustrating, it's tedious, I wanted to quit halfway through. Now, if my boss at the company I was working for came to me and said, hey, look, Jaron, we bought some accounting software to help you with this lease accounting compliance thing. Here you go. I would feel very grateful and valued by the organization if they were willing to invest in a software to make my life easier so I could focus on other things that, maybe bring more joy and add more value to the organization. So those are the three things I learned. Hopefully this was valuable to you. If it was, and maybe you're interested in hearing more about how we can help you with your lease accounting needs, feel free to reach out and schedule a demo. You can go to leasequery.com or reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure to get that scheduled for you. But thanks for watching and have a good day.